Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today.
Recording in progress.
Alrighty. I wanted to make sure that everyone can hear me all right. Can you just let me know? Okay, I got a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So welcome and thank you for joining us. I just want to make sure that all the technology is working. And had everything set up. Just give me a few minutes, a few seconds to bring up the presentation, as my internet is telling me it needs a few seconds.
Do I press 0?
Yes.
And I think there's Mila. There's Jan. I know these people.
All right. Hayne, I'm going to need your support in letting everybody in as I'm doing the presentation.
Sure thing. I'm on standby.
Thank you. And Hayne, can you tell me if you can see the presentation right now?
Yes. Please move to the presentation tab. Yep, we can see it now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have a great group. With us is Hayne, our communications manager. He's been speaking with all of you about joining us, our pre-test, our post-test, evaluation, and an exciting tabletop exercise that we'll be doing later in this month to reinforce some of the learning on this module. And I'll bring that up after the presentation. I'm going to ask those of you that have background noise to mute yourself, please, so we could all hear clearly. Thank you. So my name is Lisa Orloff. I am the founder and president of World Care Center. I'm also one of the facilitators. And to share with you today a little bit about World Care Center. I know that many of you know us, but for those of you that don't, we were started 24 years ago during the 9/11 relief effort. And our focus is really to take those lessons learned and the movement of community disaster volunteerism to champion it, and to make sure that those who seek to help, disaster volunteers, local leaders, others, are trained, protected, and connected. So we have an increase in, Hayden, if you could please mute those that have the background noise, that'd be great. So we know that there's been an increase in disasters in frequency and in severity. That we're faced with complex and compound issues like most recently dealing with COVID-19 and responding to crisis. On top of that, so you might have a hurricane while worrying about COVID-19 and other things like that. And we need to really band together and do what we can to support each other to make our response a little bit more seamless. So how do we do that? We help our communities prepare for, respond to, and recover from disaster through our training, support, and coordination. We provide an online network called the Knowledge and Coordination Center. We'll be going over that at the end of the presentation. And then, of course, we have our trainings. Today's training is supported by OSHA. It is a subset of our disaster volunteer credential, which is a common foundation for all disaster volunteers to know what is required of them skills-wise to conduct disaster response in a safe and effective manner. I'm going to share with you, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, the World Care Center video that can explain a little bit more about the impetus. Let's see.
No voice.
Oh, you don't not have a voice? I'm sorry, you're saying there's no sound?
No sound.
Yes, there's no sound.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Is there sound now? Was there sound now, or no, you're not getting sound?
No.
No.
Okay, then what I'm going to do is there's a YouTube link here. If all of you would like to view the video at another time, we'll ask you to do that. It's not critical to the training. It's just about World Care Center, and Heen will have to look into that. Sometimes that happens. I'm not sure why. Our objective for today is really to introduce to all of you the resources that OSHA has to provide. They've been integral in creating this training, and there are a lot of training resources available to you. We will be going over basic first aid and CPR for disaster volunteers. It's an overview of how to apply the most basic needed functions. It's not the full-blown course, and explore the roles of a disaster volunteer in that situation, and probably more importantly, what roles are not the things to undertake as a disaster volunteer. And then we'll be going into heat safety. What are heat stressors? How do we identify them? What can we do to mitigate them? And what to do if someone does become sick, which is critically important. And then we'll go over just really quickly a real life case study of what happens when you don't take those steps. This is our agenda for today, the review, and I'm going to ask all of you, part of the requirements and one of the reasons we're able to provide this training for free is through grant funding that requires us to ask you to take a pre-test, a post-test, and evaluation. So has everyone taken the pre-test for this course?
No.
Are there? No. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment to do that now. So it's 1:11. I'm going to ask you to take 4 minutes to do that, please, so that we can get that out of the way. So if everyone will use the QR code and take the pre-test, that would be most helpful. Thank you so much. Hey, and I believe there are 2 people in the waiting room, if you could let them in. You want to let Karen in and let her know that she can take the pretest as well.
The pretest link is posted in the chat as well.
I'm not seeing the pretest.
Have you scanned the QR code?
No, I can't find the QR code either.
It's on the screen. Are you seeing the screen right now?
I am.
Okay, so the QR code should be present. And all you need to do is take your phone and go into the
I
photo.
do not see
Lisa,
it.
your screen is black.
It's not on the screen.
It's not on the screen.
I'm sorry. Let me do this again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Great. I apologize. That's a QR code. That should open right up into the pretest. I'll give everybody one more minute and then we'll continue. All right. I'm sure you can finish that up as we're going into the first section. So about OSHA. OSHA was created to ensure the health and safety for workers by setting and enforcing standards. They provide training, outreach, education, and also compliance assistance. So if there are two sides to this coin, the employer must create a safe workspace through the environment, but also through protocols and procedures. And then it's also the responsibility of the worker to follow those protocols and procedures to stay safe. We utilize the standards of many leaders, such as OSHA, in the development of our training, and we believe that they're a great resource for volunteers as well. And there's a link to their website. So, as I said before, organizations have the rights and responsibilities to create and provide a safe workspace free of hazards, recognized hazards that are preventable. They are required to provide training, medical exams, and to keep records of all of these things. And under the same, as we said before, the same coin, different side, employees are responsible for complying with those regulations, taking those trainings, and adhering to the safety procedures. Now, are disaster volunteers under the same authority? No, but again, there are a lot of good trainings and a lot of good policies and procedures to follow. If there is an issue, there is a whistleblower protection program that an employee can follow through and file if there's an issue. It is not anonymous. You have to state who you are. And there are some legalities and procedures to follow. So again, this is not anonymous, and you have to have taken the steps to rectify the situation before filing. We will provide some links. This complaint can be done online, via fax or email, via telephone, or in person. And here are the links here to the whistleblower protection, the how do you find your local OSHA office, all of these resources. So if you want to take a snapshot here, you can do so. So we're going to jump right into injury and illness. And in this module, we're giving an overview on assessing safety measures that every worker and disaster volunteer can take to prevent accidents, to apply certain basic first aid and CPR prior to EMS arrival. So this is not full-blown out certification for first aid or CPR, but what we've done is taken the most basic and important things to know and pull them out for the disaster volunteer. And as I mentioned before, also discussing the important role of the disaster volunteer, but importantly, knowing what you shouldn't be doing. So understanding hazards inherent in disaster. So we know that there's disasters cause a lot of chaos and a lot of damage, and there's a lot of hazards in disaster response and cleanup. And for those of you that have taken some modules prior to this, this is a review. So in disaster cleanup specifically, when you're doing the cleanup work, there may be injuries from rubble or even potential building collapse, heat exposure, which we're going to speak about today, cold exposure, chemical contact, not only chemical inhalation, but chemical contact. And what we talk about a lot is there may be chemicals present due to the disaster, but there's a secondary risk of exposure to the types of chemicals that are used in disaster cleanup. So we look to explore different options of chemicals used in cleanup. For instance, we've had a lot of discussion around the use of Clorox bleach versus a less toxic solution, which is a borax dishwashing detergent solution that does the same job in mold suppression, but isn't as caustic. So there's chemicals there from the disaster, and there may be chemical exposure due to the cleanup. Smoke inhalation, emotional exhaustion, as well as exposure to those that are under considerable stress and the impact of that on an individual. And then biohazards such as bodily fluids. So the first thing we always say is always protect yourself from exposure first. It's like getting on that airplane where that mask drops down. It says take care of yourself first. So let us explore a bit about your role in identifying the emergency. It's wonderful that everybody wants to help, wants to be a disaster worker, frontline worker, or disaster volunteer. But it's important to understand who you are and who you're not. And that is all based on training and credentialing and what position you are in when you arrive at the scene, right? So, for instance, I am a firefighter. And when I am on the truck and responding with my fire department, that is a different role than when I am a bystander, not in uniform, not with my team, not with my equipment, right? My role is different. And it's the same thing when we respond with World Care Center, right? So if you have the knowledge and you have the training, that is great, and that can be utilized as a good Samaritan. So disaster workers, disaster volunteers, by nature of being in there and being on the scene, they're the first on scene. Often they're not arriving, but something is happening where they are. That's the same for community members in disaster response as well. They are knowledgeable of the community that they're working in, those around them, their team, and they're critical to provide life-saving care. So very much in the last few years, there's been a very drastic shift in really stating, our government saying, if you survive a disaster, it could be an individual disaster, or it could be a catastrophic disaster, you really need to step in and do something. So you are necessary for providing life-saving care. And you may also be vital for, in a catastrophic disaster, for overwhelmed first responders. An example of that is now many ambulances will have tourniquets or stop the bleed kits extras that they will throw off the ambulance to groups of people that are capable of helping in a mass bleed situation, such as an active shooter, unfortunately. But disaster workers and volunteers are not in charge of the scene. They don't replace official responders, and they should not ever assume that role. A lot of times you've seen in disaster response, people get very attached to what they've done, the person that they're helping. Maybe they don't want to step aside because they feel a commitment for that and to that individual. But when disaster official responders arrive, the most important thing is to give information and hand that off. So what do we want to know? We want, just like that old movie, Just the Facts, Ma'am. We want to know critical information delivered quickly and succinctly. So what did you see? AKA, what happened? What care did you provide? Did you provide CPR? Did you put on a tourniquet? What care did you provide? And did what you do have an impact on the situation? Did it help? Did the person get better? Did the person get worse? That's all critical information that first responders want to know when they arrive on scene. Before you take actions, you want to take steps to identify the emergency, right? You want to know before you jump in to help, is it too dangerous? You do not want to sacrifice your safety, right? So understand the program, the problem. And we're going to look at this picture here and discuss it. Take a moment to do a size up. And we talk about size up all the time in disaster response when World Care Center deploys, when we're setting up our operations, in the fire department, when we arrive on scene. Take a moment, size up the situation. Not even when you arrive, but as you're arriving. What are the things that you can assess while you're driving up to this situation, right? Is it safe? Is it safe for you to enter or come close to that accident, or come close to the person? Sometimes a person can be a violent threat. You want to prioritize care. So if there's one person or if there's multiple people, are they responsive or unresponsive? Are they breathing or not? Is there significant significant bleeding? We'll go further into that. Can they help themselves? Would you need to triage and move on to someone that's more critical? And do you have the equipment that you need? Not all of us ride around with an AED, but do you have a first aid kit? Do you have protective gloves? Do you have something that you could use to stop the bleed? Those are all things that you're going to assess. So looking at this picture, what is some of the problems that exist here? What are the hazards that you can identify? What are you going to look for? Does anyone want to chip in? Just unmute and share.
Yes, we're seeing this car and fire. So if we are first responder, we're not supposed to just get close to it because it's fire already. Our lives are supposed to be first.
Okay. And if you happen to decide that you are going to go and pull this person out of the car, what are some of the other hazards, saying you're on the right side of the road and the car is on the left side of the road? What are some of the other hazards that you want to be aware of?
There would be other cars driving by that might hit you as you're crossing the road.
Exactly. Exactly. And what could you do possibly to avoid that, and to maybe maybe let people know in advance, whether as they're approaching, to protect yourself?
Cones, if you have them in the car.
Yes, you could use cones, thank you, or you could use your vehicle. You could park your vehicle at an angle which would make people slow down and take notice that you're actually taking action. So these are the types of thinking that you want to just start to put into play, right? And I can tell by your answers that you're already beginning and have experience in this, but for those of you that are just exploring this, you want to start to create that ready responder attitude, that ready responder mindset, right? What is the situation? What are the risks involved? Can I take action? And what do I do to mitigate that risk, right? What do I do to lessen the exposure? So when we talk about that again, prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. When we talk about mitigating exposure, reducing exposure, reducing harm, we use a term in the industry called hierarchy of controls. And basically, this is a reverse triangle of the methods used to ensure that we're doing as much as possible to reduce the harm on the responder community. And it starts with the most effective and goes down to the least effective. And I'd like you to take note that personal protective equipment is the least effective, okay? So, of course, elimination, so physical removal of the hazard or a hazard. Substitution, replacing the hazard. So we talked a little bit about that. If we identified that a hazard is actually the cleaning solution that we're using because it's toxic and caustic, we can replace it with a less caustic solution. That's just one example. Then we have engineering controls. That's what we use to isolate people from the hazard. And we saw a lot of engineering controls during COVID-19 where we used barriers, right? We used that plastic sheeting as a barrier, or you even saw some administrative controls, which were changing the way we work, right? So changing from face-to-face, one-on-one handoff of certain items like food and medication to a drive-up item, or placing items on a table with a name associated with it, so there was no one-on-one physical contact. And then last is PPE, the things that people put on their body to protect themselves. And why do you think personal protective equipment is the least effective of all of these methods? Anyone want to give it a shot? Everybody always says on the evaluation, we want the session to be more interactive. So I need your participation in that. Anyone understand why PPE is the least effective method? No?
If you do all the others, you probably wouldn't need the personal protective equipment.
Well, that's interesting. However, the reason why personal protective equipment is the least effective of all the other elimination, substitution, engineering controls is that if you only use, and this is to your point, if you only use personal protective equipment and you don't take the above steps, and say that strap on your respirator fails, or you forget your gloves, or you have a rip in your glove, or something like that, if your PPE fails, you're going to get exposed. Whereas if you take all of those other methods and you go through those, you're not only reliant on something that may unfortunately fail or rip or not fit properly. So I'd like to just reinforce that oftentimes we get, and I do this as well, where's my PPE? What do I have, etc. And what we want to do is we want to start thinking about the other methods as well, right? How can we integrate those in? As far as personal protective equipment, when we're looking at things like a disaster cleanup, we're often looking at a hard hat. We can look at a nitrile glove to protect us from chemicals, and then a puncture-resistant glove on top of that to protect us from cuts and punctures. Your respiratory protection, we definitely utilize N95 respirators when doing a muck and gut operation, and there's a potential of mold exposure. In other circumstances and roles, there could be the use of a KN95 respirator, or you could escalate that to a half-face elastomeric respirator. It depends on the role. You want to either have steel tip boots or rubber boots, depending on what you're doing, rubber gloves, and coveralls to protect your garment and your skin. So gloves are very important because you're going to be touching things and touching the hazard, and then touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, which are your transmission zones. So you want to make sure that you're using the right glove and using it the right way. So there's that, again, there's that nitrile glove, which is a liquid resistant glove. You have leather canvas or metal mesh for puncture resistant. Fabric or fabric coated. Often when you see those fabric gloves and then they're coated with a heavy rubber, which is puncture resistant, those are quite effective. I like them because they have a good fit and you really have control over what you're doing. And then as far as masks are concerned, I mentioned them. You have your cloth mask, which is really, you know, if you have a cold and you're coughing and you're catching those droplets in that mask, it's really protecting others from your droplets. Your surgical mask, your NIOSH rated N95 respirator, which we believe is the standard for disaster work. You have a KN95, which is not NIOSH rated. And then you have your half-face elastomeric respirator with different canisters that you can, different filters you can attach and detach depending on what the hazard is. And so knowing what your role is and matching your role to the personal protective equipment is important. And then knowing how to put it on and take it off. Now, when you're working in a COVID-19 environment or a pandemic environment, it is really critically important to make sure that you're donning and doffing your personal protective equipment in exactly the right order. It is still important when you have certain toxins on you. But of course, when you're dealing in a pandemic situation, that importance escalates 1,000-fold. So when taking off your glove, which is where we want to contain everything you've been touching, right? You're going to pinch the opposite glove and grasp it, and then pull it over your wrist so that it's not touching the exposed area is not touching the skin. And you basically want to peel it and try to create an inside out glove. So all your toxins are on the inside. Then you can take that clean hand, that inside out glove, and you can either use it to follow the same procedure, or you can hold it in the gloved hand and then stick your finger off and unglove the protected hand. The goal is, number one, to not touch your skin with the exposed glove. And number two, to make sure that as much as possible you're containing the toxins in the gloves that you're taking off. You want to make sure to dispose the glove in a specific area where PPE is supposed to be disposed. You don't want to throw it in a normal trash can where someone may put their hand in to tromp something down or to find something. You want to put it in a designated trash can for PPE. You don't want to reuse the gloves, and you want to do hand hygiene immediately by washing your hands with soap and water. With an N95 respirator, or even a KN95 respirator, you want to select the right respirator. You want to place it over your nose, mouth, and chin. And in a lot of cases, there will be a flexible nose piece that you can adjust over the bridge of your nose. You want to then secure the respirator on the back of your head and adjust the fit accordingly. I don't know how many you know, but during the process many, many years ago of going through this, I learned that N95 respirator actually comes in sizes. So you have small, medium, large, extra large. And if you have the power and control for your organization, Hayne, could you let Mila in, please? If you have control over purchasing of PPE, it's really great to consider the different sizes of respirator so that it fits your volunteer and worker population. So you want to take, there are mandatory OSHA requirements where you have to go and you have to get a fit test, and there's a smell test. They put something in the air, and if you can smell that, then the respirator doesn't fit properly. When responding to a disaster and you might have the influx of new people, you might have to take into consideration what we called a field fit test. And that is where we just make sure that the bands hold the mask tightly to the face, creating a seal. And you put a little pressure on that mask, and you make sure as you breathe in and out that the air only comes through the entire filter. It does not come through the sides. There's no cold air coming through the sides. So if it doesn't work for you, if it's not a proper fit, you want to swap that out for either a different type of respirator or a different size. If you're considering being a disaster volunteer on a team, or being a regular responder, or even if you are considering responding at home, go out there and get yourselves a couple of N95 respirators. They're not as expensive as they were during COVID, and they're readily available. There are different kinds, and see what works best for you. Okay. Now, when taking off the respirator, like anything else, you want to remove, you want to touch what's least exposed. So you're going to take, of course, your gloves off first because they're the dirtiest. Then you want to lift the bottom elastic over your head from the back, and then the top elastic, and literally hold it daintily from those elastic bands and discard it. Again, discarding it in that proper container that's marked for PPE, and then you want to perform your hand hygiene. Your hand hygiene of washing your hands with soap and water, or if that's not available, you can use hand sanitizer. Okay. So here are some additional guidance that you can explore on CDC's website or OSHA's website. You can take a picture here, or we can send you these links. Any questions thus far or comments? No? Okay. All right. So we're going to do a little overview of first aid and CPR. We have much more extensive trainings in the full collaborative disaster volunteer credential module. The first is an 8-hour module for beginners. The second is more advanced module for disaster volunteers. And then the last one is for local leaders and managers on how to better manage their teams. And that's a 12-hour module. We do suggest taking all 3 courses, but we really go over and get some hands-on here. In those modules. So first, our aid and CPR. First of all, it's always good to have a first aid kit available. I always carry a little mini one in my backpack when I go to and from work, but we have larger ones on deployment. We have one that's a personal one for our team, and then we have one that we can use for the community that we're serving. So just a list of some items to have in that first aid kit: gauze pads, adhesive bandages, Band-Aids. Band-Aids are always really great to have on hand. You can have wound cleaning agents, or you can have things that will seal the wound, a topical wound, scissors, a blanket, tweezers, adhesive tape, the latex gloves, and N95 respirator to protect you. You might have a resuscitation bag, or you might have a pocket mask, which is basically a plastic piece to put over the victim's face as you're providing mouth to mouth. You can have wraps, splint, and also you can have a stop the bleed kit, a tourniquet. Other items might be a rigid splint, a spray for allergic reactions, and some medication. Medication is really for your personal kit. And again, if you wanted to look here at OSHA, they have some advice for what you should have in your medical bag. Now, we do go over Stop the Bleed in our collaborative disaster volunteer credential, if that was something you wanted to learn. We are going to move into CPR now, an overview. So cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And now here is the thing. This is the procedure that combines chest compressions and rescue breaths, right? To manually support breathing and circulation. And what we're learning and what we're following the role of is some people may be very reluctant, bystanders may be reluctant to provide rescue breaths, especially if they don't have the equipment or they don't have the barrier. And so statistics have shown that chest compressions only are really, I think they say 30%, the victim has a 30% better chance of surviving with chest compressions versus nothing. So if you're considering, well, I don't want to do rescue breaths, I don't know this person, I don't know what they have, I don't have a barrier, that should not stop you from doing chest compressions. So as you're arriving, you're going to assess what the need is. Is the patient conscious? Yes or no? If yes, turn them on the side and call for help. You should basically be calling 911 as you're approaching the situation, right? You can always call back and say they've walked away or they've gotten up or they don't want care, but you want to activate them as soon as possible because it does take 7 to 10 minutes sometimes to get to where you need to be for the emergency responder to get there. So do not hesitate. Do not hesitate to call 911 as soon as as you see a situation. Okay, so no, if they're not breathing, then you're going to start to perform CPR. If they are breathing, again, same thing, turn them on their side, repeat calling for help and waiting for help to arrive. We're going to have a video here. Hopefully the audio will work. Some CPR basics, and this is going to be reviewed in the video as well, but pay attention here because we're going to watch the video, even though maybe the sound may not work. We're going to watch it, and this is a repeat of what you're going to be seeing. So before you begin, you want to make sure the person is, well, before you begin, let's revisit the arriving on scene and making sure it's safe, right? That's the first step. Then when you know it's safe, you're going to lie the person face up on a hard surface. You're going to open, unbutton, rip open, or cut their clothing open to gain access to the chest. This is not a delicate procedure. We are not worried about modesty. We are ripping that cloth off to get exposure to the chest. You need to compress over the sternum or the breastbone. So if you just follow your Adam's apple or down past your nipples, and then you will feel that there's a V in your rib cage. That's your sternum. Okay, everybody can take a moment to do that. That's your breastbone in the center of your chest where your rib cage meets. Be sure when you are applying your compressions that you are pushing with the heel of your hand. Otherwise, you might not be pushing on the sternum. Okay. The CPR cycle consists of compression followed by mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But as we've said, that you can skip the mouth-to-mouth, and if you skip the mouth-to-mouth, you just continually perform your your compressions. Okay. So the steps are: rip open that shirt, the clothing, get exposure. The other thing that does is that actually prepares the victim for the AED that our emergency responders are going to applying. So while you continue, or a responder is working with chest compressions, you can immediately be applying the patches for the AED. So you're going to place one heel on the top of the other hand, and as I'm speaking, clear your desktops and do this. Just go through it. You place one heel on the top of one hand and on the center of the chest, right? So place that heel on the center of the chest, the sternum, right? That rib cage, you can feel it. Okay, you place the second hand over the first. You can interlock your fingers, or you can do them one on top of the other. Position your shoulders over your hands. Now, I want everybody, and I know this is a Zoom training, but I want everybody to get up from your chair. I want you to put your hands, the heel of the hands on your desktop. And then I want you to move the center of gravity from over your feet to over your hands, so that your shoulders, okay, are now over your hands. Your elbows are locked and you are leaning into your desk, right? That is the position that you want. Now I'm 5'2". You can't see me right now, but I'm 5'2". I'm a $120, 25. Okay, maybe a $130. And so I'm not a heavy person, but this is going to put all my weight into those hands and allow you the strength to begin those compressions. And you can even begin rocking your body into your shoulders, into your hands. You can feel it. You can see your desk move. And you begin your compressions downwards into the chest. You're going to do, if you were going to do the compression mouth to mouth, it would be 30 compressions at the rate of 100 to 100 compressions per minute. They say sing the Staying Alive song by the Bee Gees. And you should be trying to compress 2 inches deep and release your pressure without removing your hand. This is exhausting. This is exhausting. So you want to make sure if there are bystanders around, say, hey, anybody that wants to help, get ready to take turns, right? So it is 30 compressions, and then it is your rescue breaths, but we're not going to do rescue breaths here. You're just going to keep your compressions going at that rate of 100 to 100 compressions per minute until responders arrive, right? So we're going to go over this video. You will see it. Hopefully you will hear it. And then we're going to take questions because I know you'll have some questions.
If you see a teen or adult suddenly collapse, it is important to act.
Can you hear it? Can you hear the video?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know why.
can.
That's fantastic. Great.
Fast. Helping to save a life is easier than you might think. Just start hands-only CPR. The first step is to ask someone to call 911 and to get an AED, or call 911 yourself and put your phone on speaker mode so the operator can assist you. Then get directly over the victim. Put the heel of one hand in the center of the chest and put your other hand on top of the first. Then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until help arrives. It's important to push, giving 100 to 120 compressions per minute, which is about the same tempo as the song Staying Alive, or the rate of music you're listening to right now. Let's hope you never have to use hands-only CPR, but know that CPR combined with using an AED provides the best chance of saving a life. If possible, use an AED every time you provide CPR. Again, if you see a teen or adult suddenly collapse, don't be afraid to start hands-only CPR. Remember, call 911 and ask someone to get an AED. Then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until the AED and help arrives. Your actions can help save a life.
Pretty simple, right? So that's pretty basic, wouldn't you say? Has anyone provided CPR before?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right, good. Thank you. And would you provide CPR?
Yes, I'm certified.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now the point here is for compression only CPR, you don't have to be certified. This is this is something that you can do even if you haven't been CPR certified. Okay, so just you can review that link again on your own, or if you think this is something you'd be interested in learning more about, you can take more training from us or take more training online or sign up with another entity to take more training. We'll continue on. Some of the, does anyone have any questions on this? Because there's one question that I always get, and I'd like to provide that answer for you. If you have it. Does anyone have any questions? All right. The question that I get is, when do you stop your compressions? Can anyone answer that? So you do not stop. Sorry, go ahead, Anastasia.
Oh, okay. use stock compressions would help is in paramedics or whatever
That's
help you called for.
That is correct. So you stop compressions only if the person becomes conscious again or when help arrives. You don't stop compressions for any reason other than if they become if they gain consciousness again, or if the first responders arrive to provide additional care. Okay, so again, that can be exhausting, and you want to really make sure that you are getting other people ready to help you, right? You definitely want to have them getting ready to help you, because it's exhausting, and you just may not be able to sustain it for that long. Okay. So now we're going to be moving on to addressing injury and illness, a review, and then we'll go into the heat illness. So you should understand that we're not only, as workers and disaster volunteers, we're not only exposed to the hazards that the disaster has created, but then the cleanup creates, right? We have to be aware of that. You want to be able to assess your role in an emergency, especially when you're arriving to perhaps even help someone with first aid or CPR. Know what your role is, what you can do, what you shouldn't do, how to make sure you're staying safe and not becoming a secondary victim. We went over what you need for first aid, and we understood the basics of compression-only CPR. Okay. All right, so we're going to move into our heat safety module. So this is really to understand more about heat safety, so you can assess what are the symptoms of heat illness, risk factors, methods to mitigate heat hazards, and what to do if someone becomes ill. Okay, so what is heat illness? So the body's natural way to regulate temperature is to increase heart rate and sweat. And right now, with everybody conserving energy, I'm very much sweating. We don't have air conditioning here. So increased heart rate and sweat helps to reduce the body's core temperature from rising to unhealthy levels. So this can happen when you're outdoor or when you're indoor, when temperatures rise. Key thing here, as disaster volunteers and disaster workers, wearing your mask, wearing your Tyvek suit, wearing your gloves, wearing a hat to protect your head. You can succumb to heat illness in cold weather wearing those items. So this is not just about the temperatures that we're in today. This is about the temperatures when you're moving around and working in a cold environment, but you're wearing all of that stuff, and your core body temperature is rising. Okay, so dozens of workers die and thousands become ill due to exposure to heat illness in the workplace. All right. Anyone can experience heat-related illness, and it is preventable. So what are our risk factors for heat-related illness? Lifestyle habits, our body, ourselves, our physicality, the temperature inside, outside, what we're wearing, the humidity, the length of time that we're exposed to that heated environment and direct sunlight, the amount of physical exertion and workload while in that environment. And we've learned that being unaccustomed to be working in the heat is a critical factor to heat illness, right? So you can be in great physical shape, you can be young, you can be going to the gym, you can be strong, but if you are not used to working in the heat, you are at a higher risk. And we're gonna see a real case study on that, which is pretty tragic. So you have to those that are not used to working in this environment, you have to ease into the work. Nearly 3 out of 4 fatalities, again, 3 out of 4 people who died from heat illness died during the first week of work. Okay, so they had not had experience before. They came in, they started on the job, they didn't ease into it, and they succumbed to heat illness. Okay. So other personal factors are if you're on medication that's a diuretic, such as diabetes, or if you're obese or overweight, high blood pressure, heart disease. Keep in mind certain medications are a diuretic. They may not. You may be less likely to feel the heat condition, or it may limit your body's ability to sweat, right, and to cool itself down and to retain water. Your personal habits, inadequate intake of water or fluids, recent use of alcohol, which dehydrates you, maybe even drinking too much coffee. I'm a coffee drinker, so I have to be careful of that. That can dehydrate you, or use of certain drugs. Your physical characteristics may cause you to dehydrate faster or limit your ability to cool down. So older age, lower level of fitness, being pregnant, and if you haven't built up tolerance to working in heat. Okay. Again, you can see our source there that you can take a picture of and learn more if you'd want to. Okay, type of heat-related illnesses consist of heat stroke, heat exhaustion. You can have heat cramps. This fourth one here basically means that you pass out or faint from too much exposure to heat rash, and then muscle breakdown, right? So as the symptoms of heat illness intensify with time or action, you can take the steps to get out of the heat, get out of the sun, to take rest, to hydrate, and to cool down. If you don't take those steps, the immediate sign that you have some of these symptoms, this is going to escalate. Okay, the illness will increase and you will get sick if you're exposed to this, and there may be the chance of death. So your symptoms, and this is symptoms not only in yourself that you have to look out for, but for your partner. Confusion, slurred speech, unconsciousness, seizures, heavy sweating, or if you're escalating hot and dry skin, so your body is basically can't sweat anymore, so now your skin's hot and dry. Very high body temperatures, rapid heartbeat, nausea or vomiting, your urine discoloration, so when you're dehydrated and your urine gets really bright yellow. We've had coworkers describe that their coworker got really wonky, like they thought they were drunk. They would, what is wrong with him? Is he drunk? And realize later that he was suffering from heat illness. So you want to be careful of this. And one sign and symptom before you, even the night before, if your urine is yellow or dark yellow, you need to start drinking water immediately. You want to start hydrating well before you're going to start working in the heat and the sunshine. So again, you want to, prevention techniques are getting acclimatized to working in that environment, right? Gradually adapting to the environment, allowing your body to adjust and tolerate the heat levels, right? You don't want to be pushing yourself to excess to try to keep with others that up with the others that may have more experience. You have to understand that you need to take breaks and drink plenty of fluid. It's not a sign of weakness. And do not brush off those signs and symptoms of heat-related illness in yourself or with others. It's always better to check in. So one strategy is to follow the 20% rule. So on the first day, you work no more than 20% on that particular shift of exposure, and then you increase by 20% a day. Now, this is extremely mindful. You have to have the manager on board to do this, to put you in other roles, those 80, 60, 40, 20% of times of the day. But it's really something to think about, especially for those that have the authority to do so. So you might have shorter work schedules if you're doing a job that requires for you to be out, like a roofer or a tarper or something like that. You could change the time of day that you work so it's not in the hot sun. Dress for the heat, wear an appropriate hat, light colored clothing, breathable clothing, take frequent breaks, take training and offer training to learn more. Monitor yourself and your coworkers. Use the buddy system, which we talk about all the time in every environment. And if someone should become ill, or if you become ill, you want to stop working immediately. You want to initiate cooling down in many different ways. You'd never, ever want to leave someone alone, and you don't want to be alone. You want to have someone sit with you until you feel better, or until you are getting the help that you need. Okay, so we talked about this before, whereas you can get heat illness in any kind of setting. Again, you could be in a cold weather, but you could be in all of that full PPE and your body is overheating. So you want to make sure you're aware of that, and you're taking breaks, you're cooling down, you're hydrating. So a typical response for heat-related illness: move the affected worker to a cooler area, into shade or into air conditioning. You don't want to ever leave them alone. We spoke about that before. You want to cool the worker down. So you want to remove the outer layers of clothing, especially if they're in protective clothing, like a Tyvek suit. You can place ice or cold, wet towels on the top of their head, on the neck, in the armpits, and in the groin, and cool those areas down. That's the blood is gonna cool and circulate to the rest of the body. If you can have fans to circulate around the worker. If you don't have any of this, you can put them in your vehicle and turn on the air conditioner and cool them down in the vehicle, but monitor them, stay with them. And you want to encourage them to drink water on their own if possible. You don't want to ever force someone to drink if they cannot drink themselves, right? Okay. You want to call 911 if you see the symptoms of heat stroke, like slurred speech, confusion, babbling, someone acting like they're drunk but they're not, and then losing unconsciousness. So if you're in doubt, call 911. Okay. Again, make sure to pay attention to new workers. You want to always give them a few days to acclimate. All symptoms should be taken seriously. And if someone develops these symptoms, they should stop working, right? Any questions thus far? Okay. So as I mentioned, this is actually a real life situation that had happened to a young man. In July, 45-year-old man in July began working at his job as a roofer. There was no formal plan in place to protect new workers from heat-related illness. So there was not that 20% work on the roof and then do something else, right? But the employer did what they thought they should do by providing water, ice, electrolytes on the site. Adam felt fine his first 3 days of work. The fourth day on the job, it was slightly warmer. Now, keep in mind, he's working, he's going home, he's going back to work. One wouldn't think that there was an issue. His fourth day on the job, it was slightly warmer. The temperatures were 85 degrees. It was humid out, making the situation feel like 91 degrees. And in the afternoon, Adam told his coworkers that he felt hot and nauseous. He climbed down from the roof and went to rest, but there was no shade. He went to rest in the sun. And when his coworkers finally went down and checked on him a few minutes later, he was confused and began seizing. At that time, they took him to the hospital, where he then later passed away. So this is a real life case study. This happened. This was a real life situation, very tragic. But from what we know now, what can we learn from this situation? What do you think could have been done differently from what we've learned? Anybody want to chip in and chime in here? Okay, so everybody's being shy. We can, so that 20% acclimating the worker. So Adam could have worked 20% on the roof the first day, 40 the next day, 60 the following day, and really eased into it, which would have given his body an opportunity and a chance to adjust. I think the big thing here is there's no breaks here. He could have taken breaks to cool down. Maybe Adam wasn't aware of the signs and symptoms of what heat-related stress felt like, right? Or even Adam was not known the severity of heat-related illness. So awareness is key, and then critical. Someone should have escorted Adam down and stayed with him and immediately called 911. Okay. So just a quick review. We've understood the types of heat-related illness, the risk factors, and the steps for prevention and what to do if someone becomes ill. So overall, we've assessed the hazards that workers may be exposed to, your role in an emergency, items needed for first aid, compression-only CPR, types of heat-related illness, risk factors of heat-related illness, and the steps of prevention and first aid for heat-related illness. Any questions or comments on the training? Okay. We're going to ask you all to please take a moment to fill out this post-test. This helps us understand if the level of training that we're providing is adequate. If you've actually benefited from the training, maybe you've learned something new. And this helps us, show to those that are funding this course that we are doing the things that we said we were going to do. So if you would all take a moment and scan that QR code. And then after that, there's also an evaluation that we ask you to take. And this is the QR code for the evaluation. The course is not CDV. The course is actually DRST3. Sorry about that. The course is DRST3.
I have a question.
Sure.
With the pre-test and this one, when I scan the code, I cannot read the questions on my phone. there's not enough space and you can't change the,
Yeah, I can't
Um,
either.
You can't do it on your phone. Okay. There is,
so what happens next?
well, what you can do is Hayne will email you the link to the post test and the evaluation, and you can do it on a computer when you get
Okay.
to the
And
computer.
I'd also need the pre-test because I couldn't read those questions either.
Oh, you couldn't read that. Oh, that's weird.
For
No, you
the
only get
post
the
test
first
and
3 letters
evaluation,
of
the links are
the word.
posted in the chat as well.
Okay. I was able to turn my phone horizontal, and then I could see the answers.
Correct.
Okay, so you can if you turn your phone, you can enter it.
Yeah, it helped to turn and then you could see each one of the answers. Yes.
Okay.
And I cannot do that. This is
You
Jan.
can't. Okay. All righty. Well, we will email you a follow-up, and you can fill out your post-test and the pre-test. And that's strange. I'm not sure. We'll have to look into, because I actually can see everything on
I
my
also need an email. I can't see it all either.
Okay.
Neither can I.
All right. Well, we will email that to you. Apologies, Hayne. Let's test that with different. Oh, may I ask you, ladies, what kind of phone you're using?
Android.
Android.
iPhone.
iPhone. And it's the same issue with the iPhone?
I have the iPhone, and I was able to turn my phone and see them.
I cannot, and I have an iPhone.
You have an iPhone and you're not able to. Okay, we will send you those links so that you can do that, both the pre-test and the post. So what we did do was we emailed the pre-test to everyone, and now we will email the post-test and the evaluation to everyone. Hayne will take care of that immediately following the training. He'll also send you an invitation to join our Knowledge and Communication Center, which is a really cool portal. It's a coordination portal. So let me see. Can you see that on your screen? Okay, you can log in here, and there's training and coordination. I really encourage all of you to join. And then the last thing that I want to bring to your attention, and this is available on World Care Center's page under our programs, under events and training. On July 24th from 11:30 to 1, we'll be doing a roundtable, and we'll be running people through a scenario on some safety scenarios that include heat safety. Using the new portal, and everybody can come together and test what you've learned. If you have employees or team members that you'd like to see test their knowledge, they are welcome as well. So we invite you all to participate in the various ways that we are providing the training and sharing the knowledge and getting everybody, all the wonderful responders that, give so much of themselves. We want to make sure that they are safe and have the information that they need to avoid secondary injury. Any questions or comments? We'll follow up with, we will follow up with an email for you with all of this information so that you can take the post-test, you can take the evaluation, and you can join us on the Knowledge Center and the tabletop discussion.
I took the post-test and it said thank you, but I'm not getting an email confirmation nor a certificate.
You won't get a certificate. We actually hand do the SAND certificates. So what we have to do is we have to compare your pre-test and your post-test, and then we generate the certificates. So the certificates will take some time. It's not automated.
Okay, but I should be getting an email confirmation though, correct? Like I did on the pre-test?
Okay, we'll make a We'll make a note of that. Hayne, are you capturing all of this?
Yes, I'm capturing all of that.
Okay, we'll make those adjustments. Thank you so much. We want to make sure we're using technology and we're using it to the best of, and I actually really like that. I don't know if it's a suggestion, but I love that idea of being able to take the pre and post test and immediately getting the certificate. I'm going to see if we have a capability of doing that. That would be super cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. Have you ever used a platform that does that for you?
Yes.
What is it, Kathy?
That I do not know.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we actually have it on our portal when you take the class online, but we don't have it yet for something like this. But we'll look into it because that's a great idea. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And please do stay in touch. We have a lot going on. We have so much going on in the month of September as well. And one of the new initiatives that we're working on is actually doing a hands-on day where we're inviting everybody who's taking classes to actually come to our center. We have CPR dummies, we have Stop the Bleed dummies, and we're going to be doing a whole hands-on session so you can come with your team and you can get some hands-on practice. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day. Stay safe and stay cool.